Good morning. Welcome to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. Great to be back with you. Took a couple of days off to travel around Florida to go to some spring training. I'll be doing it again in March, folks, so you may miss me for a couple of days again. But I'm here back on the show today as we get ready for the weekend ahead. Can't wait to get into it with you on the show. We'll talk some NBA. The NBA is back. We got Gilbert McGregor in the house to talk all about what's going on in the National Basketball Association. Also, my buddy Jeff Levering, who does play-by-play for the Milwaukee Brewers. He's in Arizona. We'll talk about what the Brewers did in the offseason. Of course, we have guest contributors from Legal Sports Report and the very latest on futures odds around sports as well. So stick with us here on the show. We got a fun one planned for you for the next hour, 11 a.m. 12 p.m. Eastern, as we always are here on NewsWire. Let's start off with two breaking news stories in Major League Baseball. You may have seen me on the early line this morning talking with Ben and Donnie about Tim Anderson signing with the Marlins, that it would be done by the end of the day. And, well, it is not officially done here. You got to remember, there's always a physical attached to this stuff, but ESPN reporting that it is an agreement in place, 1 year, $5 million contract. Anderson will take over at shortstop to play for the Marlins this season. Again, that is pending the physical. Usually these things get done, so I would expect this one to get done too. I don't see any stopping blocks for this. It's the first Major League free agent the Marlins have signed this offseason. Mitch Keller has also agreed to a contract extension. ESPN reporting this as well. He'll be with the Pirates now for a long period of time, 27 years old, and he's going to be playing with the Pirates and starting opening day for them for the foreseeable future. So that is the good news there in baseball. Two players getting paid. Here's the bad news. We're back to it here, unfortunately, with the New York Mets yet again with an injury to a pitcher. Yesterday, we found out that Kodai Senga, who's expected, of course, to be in their starting rotation, had some arm fatigue. Today, we find out that the injury is a little bit more serious than that, with a shoulder issue and a moderate strain, and he's going to start the season on the injured list. So, my gosh, the Mets just can't get through these injuries with their starting pitchers, whether it was Scherzer, Verlander, DeGrom, Matt Harvey. I mean, I guess I'm going way back in revisionist history here, but now, unfortunately, Senga is the next one along those lines. Eric Hosmer, who won a World Series with the Kansas City Royals and then bounced around the league a little bit at the end. He announced his retirement, and a four-time Gold Glove Award winner as well. He was with the Cubs and certainly released, but a great career for Eric Hosmer. Also played in South Florida baseball as well. Gleyber Torres yesterday, who's been the subject of trade rumors with the Yankees, said that he wants to be a Yankee for life. He was an All-Star in 2018 and 2019 with them. And also, Hyun-Jin Ryu could not get a contract here in the big league, so he decided to go back to Korea, signing with the Eagles. He signs an 8-year, 17 billion won, okay? W-O-N, not $1 million. Won in the KBO, and if he sees this thing through, by the way, he'll be 44 years old at the end of the contract. But Hyun-Jin Ryu, nice career in the major leagues, now goes back to his homeland in Korea as well. All right, now let's get to some college headlines. The Southland Conference has ruled they are suspending 8 players for that crazy brawl between Texas A&M Commerce and Incarnate Word. And naturally, this is going to be a huge suspension for both. 4 players from each team were suspended for flagrant, unsportsmanlike actions, the conference said. The suspensions will begin immediately. Also, a 14-team college football playoff was discussed by college football management. The playoff management has decided to expand the 12 to 14, and this could happen as soon as 2026. So get ready for more playoffs in college football. Penn State last night upsets Illinois. This has been happening in the Big Ten all season. We've seen Purdue go down. Last night's Illinois. The final score was 90-89. And also, Burge Nigerian, okay, my gosh, I practiced this 5 times before the show. Burge Nigerian, who spent a lot of time with the New England Patriots and the former right-hand man of Bill Belichick, ended up taking a job with Boston College as the chief of staff for their football program. So sorry, butchered the name there a couple times. Practiced several times before the show. Still can't get it right. Go figure. Okay, let's go over to basketball. As I mentioned, the NBA starting back up. Labor unions are opposed right now to the the Wizards and Capitals moving to Virginia. They're led by a hospitality workers union in the capital region, and apparently it's creating another hurdle for them to go ahead and make that move to Virginia. Julius Randle of the New York Knicks says he's making progress from his dislocated shoulder, so good news there for him. And also, Pistons forward Isaiah Stewart has a court date in Phoenix tomorrow, and this was from a game back on February the 14th. He was issued a citation at the time. Remember, he was asked to leave the stadium, essentially given a citation. Also, LeBron James not going to play tonight against the Golden State Warriors with a left ankle injury. On Monday, in case you were watching Coast to Coast, Scott Farrell had quite a few things to say about LeBron James and a potential retirement and what we would call like a farewell tour, as they say in all of sports. Here is Farrell on Coast to Coast on LeBron on the potential farewell tour.
Like I said before, I believe fully that he is another one of these. I think he's brilliant, great, amazing, unbelievable, sensational, amazing career from high school till today. Just absolutely unequaled. But he's got to have a farewell tour, because any guy that'll have a decision show and any guy that makes movies about himself and has a company that makes documentaries about him and everything he does. And then we have, every time he goes to a high school game or a college game, he has to have a film crew follow him. He's another one of these vain people that has to have a farewell tour. Yeah. There is no way that guy will have I heard the Tim Duncan quit. There is no way that this guy, who is so in love with himself on camera. I don't care what anybody says. If you think that guy doesn't love attention, you're imagining things. Christ, he does more everything than you can imagine. Commercials, movies, TV, documentaries, clothing lines, blah, blah, blah. I'm surprised he's not Tiger Woods' caddy.
Scott Farrell every day on Coast to Coast, 3 o'clock Eastern, right here on SportsGrid. All right, the latest in sports betting news. Calls to a Florida gambling hotline are up 138% since it launched in December. My goodness. And again, sometimes these are called by accident, by the way, and sometimes people are calling the wrong number here, but this is a very big number. We'll dive into this a little bit later in the show. Yesterday, if you were in the App Store, of course, for iOS, you may have noticed that Apple has launched a new app. It's called Apple Sports, an up-to-date scoreboard with all of the major leagues. And also, it can connect users to streaming apps that broadcast the games, and also has, of course, sports betting odds, which we find important for this show. Amazon Prime Video has decided to pay $120 million to stream its first NFL playoff game after the 2024 season. Now, remember, Peacock were the ones who did this last year. Amazon's like, we'll bulk at the price. They didn't do it this time around. They're going to go ahead and pay that. And also, Austin Matthews in the NHL scored his 51st goal of the season. In his 54th game, he is the fastest player to reach that mark in 28 years. That's the latest. We'll take a quick time out here on NewsWire. We'll talk some Milwaukee Brewers baseball with Jeff Levering next.
Johnny's a 19-point lead late in the opening half, only to squander that lead. Hall ball under Shaheen Holloway coming all the way back.
All these guards start jacking up shots, and then Soriano doesn't get the ball. Hey, Rick, how about stop throwing your kids under the bus and get your big man the ball, your best player, play inside out like you were doing earlier in the game, and you probably would have won.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
This is going to fall 6, 7, or 8, right? This is going to fall 6, 7, or 8. 6, you lose. 7, you push. 8, you win. So it's going to come down to the end.
And he missed the 3, and they are not going to foul. They're not going to foul. He just drove and scored, though. Oh, they gave up a dunk with 14.1 to go.
In-game live, prime time, only on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
felt during the year that there was a little bit of disconnect with Wilkes and Kyle Shanahan. The total points allowed by Steve Wilkes' defense the last 3 years before this, head coach for the Cardinals, they gave up the 26th most points. Defensive coordinator for the Browns, 20th most points. And then Carolina, they gave up the 19th most points.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. Of course, spring training games actually begin today with the Dodgers and Padres. And then for everybody else this weekend, that includes the Milwaukee Brewers. And boy, things are going to look a lot different when the first lineup cards are exchanged in spring training. Jeff Levering, no question, will have his eye on that, working for Bally Sports, doing play-by-play for the Brewers for what now seems like a long period of time, Jeff, that you've been with the Brewers. Thank you again. For coming on and talking about it with me here on the show. I know a lot of changes in store, so I want to get your thoughts.
Yeah, my pleasure. It's year number 10 for me in Milwaukee, which is crazy to think about.
Wow.
Radio, TV now, a little bit more TV than I've been doing radio. But I tell you, the core of this Brewers team has stayed pretty consistent over the last couple of years. It'll look different in the managerial chair with Pat Murphy taking over for Craig Counsell, who went to the north side of Chicago with the Cubs. A lot was discussed about that over the last 2 months, but having a stable voice in Pat Murphy, a guy who's been on the bench since 2016 and maintaining the same coaching staff was really important for some of the new faces that are coming into this organization in 24.
Yeah, I think that's well said, Jeff. I think that what people don't realize is you mentioned like core and consistency. It almost doesn't matter. I know it's crazy to say what the Brewers end up doing. I just know that come September, they're going to be in it in some way. I don't know how, I don't know where, and I don't know who's going to be on the team, but they just have this sort of plan that is executed. And I do want to start, though, with the manager, as you mentioned, because, I don't know how that will be different. You mentioned Pat Murphy comes in, and actually he's got so much familiarity with the organization and with the team. But that was a pretty big hammer to drop, I thought, in the offseason, maybe the biggest one yet. With Craig Counsell, who's had so much success, ends up leaving and going to the Cubs. What did you make of it at the time? Like, what did you see that coming? Did you hear anything about it? Because not a lot of people did.
I don't think anybody saw that Craig was going to go to Chicago. I think that there were a lot of people that thought that Craig might leave Milwaukee, which was hard to believe, right? He could have had a blank check and written whatever he wanted to stay in Milwaukee and be 10 minutes away from the ballpark. But at the end of the day, he got everything he wanted in Chicago, right? He's got more resources, more financial runaround to play with, right, in Chicago with the Ricketts family and the way that they run the organization. He can stay close to home. He can get a little apartment on the lake if he wants to in Chicago and then drive home after day games back to Wisconsin. So, and he can still watch his kids grow up. He's got 2 daughters that are in high school. He's got 2 sons that are playing in the Big Ten Conference, one at Michigan and one at Minnesota. So he got everything he wanted. And I think he reset what managers are going to be making for the future, too. He's the highest paid manager since I saw Joe Torre in 2007. So he's worth it. He's a great manager. He's going to do a great job in Chicago. I think that when he comes to Milwaukee for Memorial Day of the first time, we'll see what the reaction's like. I think a lot of people at the beginning would have maybe booed, right? If the Brewers opened up at home against Chicago, it might have been a little different story, but you'll have 6-7 weeks of a Major League Baseball season to kind of let things chill out a little bit before those two teams play in Milwaukee for the first time.
Yeah. He did. I mean, look, he did a lot for the Brewers organization. Hopefully, people recognize that. But you know how fans are. We'll see. Okay, so the big trade that was made. I don't think anybody thought that Corbin Burnes was going to be in the Milwaukee Brewers' long-term plans anyway. I know that Brandon Woodruff is. He's going to not going to pitch this year, but he'll be with the team next year after he signed that contract. But Burnes ended up going to the Baltimore Orioles, and the Orioles did pay a pretty hefty price, Jeff, for 1 year. Get a starting pitcher in DJ Hall, left-handed pitcher Joey Ortiz, a potential shortstop of the future. We don't know that for sure, and obviously the Brewers have some options there as well. They also get a comp pick. I think in the end, if you're not going to sign Burnes, you want to get whatever you can for him, and I think that's kind of the way that the Brewers executed this.
Absolutely. And I think Corbin, after all the arbitration stuff a year ago went down, he had a great season last year, kind of petered off a little bit towards the end, but was dominant in his one playoff start. But he was not mincing words when he said, I'm looking forward to free agency. I'm looking forward to seeing what comes at the end of the season. He's with a new agent with Scott Boras after severing ties with CAA. So he was going to make a move at the end of the season. I think the Brewers knew that going in. So getting what they got with DL Hall, who's going to battle for the starting rotation spot, Joey Ortiz, who could play over the infield, plus a compensation pick. They got what they could get for Corbin Burnes. They will miss his arm. They will miss his stability. It's great to have Brandon Woodruff back, even though he may not pitch this year, maybe September, but I think that's really a lofty goal for Brandon. But at least you have him to rehab, his ability to be with the team while he's rehabbing for some of these younger guys in the rotation to be around Brandon Woodruff. And then you have him for next year as well. So I think that the Brewers have done a fine job mixing and matching what they've done with their pitching staff to revamp the innings. You got Freddie Peralta, who's going to headline the rotation, brought Wade Miley back and Colin Ray. I don't think anybody was surprised with what happened with Corbin Burnes. The timing was a little bit different a week after signing Rhys Hoskins, where you think, okay, maybe the team's going for it now. And then you go in and trade Corbin Burnes. The timing may have been the only thing that was a little bit different in that trade.
Yeah, and always reconfiguring. It seems like that is the job of Matt Arnold at this point. And part of that reconfiguration, I don't know, I feel like Rhys Hoskins is going to fit in real well with the Brewers. Like, I feel like if you told me he played for the Brewers the last 5-10 years, I would have been like, yeah, like he did. Like, it feels like that's the perfect fit for what the Brewers are trying to do. And by the way, looks 100% healthy. I think there's a really good chance that he puts up the numbers that he did in the past. And we may be looking back on this signing as one of the better ones in the offseason.
I agree with you. And for the Brewers, they have not had a lot of stability at first base for a long time. And really, since Prince Fielder, have they had a first baseman who's really solidified the position. They've had some good years at a first baseman. Rowdy Tellez a couple of years ago at 35 homers. Go back to Chris Carter. That's a great name for your immaculate grid sometime, who led the league in homers in 2016. You think about some of the first basemen, but they're just one-year guys. So I think having a guy like Rhys Hoskins to stabilize first base for the first time in a while is a really good thing. And he fits in with the clubhouse. He's a good guy. He went to the same high school I went to, so I'm already a big fan of Rhys Hoskins. We've got those ties together. I'm going to go into the clubhouse in a couple of minutes and let him know that I had a higher batting average than he did in high school, but that's beside the point. But I think he's going to fit in great with this organization. He just feels like a perfect Brewer.
Yeah, I love you throwing that little thing in there, Jeff. Good job.
Have to.
All right. Gary Sanchez is also a Brewer all of a sudden here out of nowhere. 1 year, $7 million contract. A lot of incentives. There's a smaller base here. Look, Sanchez as a catcher, Jeff, has been mixed. I think we would establish that. He sort of revitalized himself a little bit with the Padres, bounced around the league here a little bit. Another sort of buy low for the Brewers to say, hey, look, come in, hit as many bombs as you can. We'll figure it out. We'll figure out somewhere to play you, right?
Yeah, I think it's add another bat, right? He's been around a long time. He can give you some innings behind the plate. The Brewers don't necessarily have a backup catcher. Victor Caratini signed as a free agent in the offseason, left somewhere else. So you've got William Contreras, who you'd love to have behind the plate as much as you can. But Gary Sanchez improved a lot defensively last year. And you don't have a guy like Blake Snell who can be very, very finicky with his control, to say the least at times. And he was applauding Gary Sanchez. I mean, really, when you go back to when Blake Snell took off last year, it was when Gary Sanchez was behind the plate for him. So maybe he's gotten a little. The Brewers have done a really good job in cultivating these catchers. You go back to Manny Pena, Yasmani Grandal, Omar Narvaez, and now what they have with William Contreras. Their catchers have supremely improved since the 2017-ish season. So maybe they can get their hands on Gary Sanchez and help him continue to get better defensively while he continues to hit.
All right. Well, Jeff, always great catching up with you. My best. I hope you have a great season. Enjoy. My best to Uke as well. What a amazing thing it is. Another year behind the mic there. No question. Great to see you, Jeff. Thank you again for coming on the show. Really appreciate it.
Appreciate it, Craig. 90 years young for Uke and still going strong.
Incredible. 90 years old. Bob Uecker back behind the mic again with the Brewers. Jeff Levering on TV and behind the mic as well. Be right back.
Johnny's a 19-point lead late in the opening half, only to squander that lead. Hall ball under Shaheen Holloway, coming all the way back.
All these guards start jacking up shots, and then Cioriano doesn't get the ball. Hey, Rick, how about stop throwing your kids under the bus and get your big man the ball, your best player, play inside out like you were doing earlier in the game, and you probably would have won.
The Early Line. Only on SportsGrid.
This is going to fall 6, 7, or 8, right? This is going to fall 6, 7, or 8. 6 you lose, 7 you push, 8 you win. So it's going to come down to the end.
And he missed the 3, and they are not going to foul. They're not going to foul. He just drove and scored, though. Oh, they gave up a dunk with 14.1 to go.
In-game live, prime time, only on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
It felt during the year that there was a little bit of disconnect with Wilks and Kyle Shanahan. The total points allowed by Steve Wilks' defense the last 3 years before this, head coach for the Cardinals, they gave up the 26th most points, defensive coordinator for the Browns, 20th most points, and then Carolina, they gave up the 19th most points.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. We got Sam McQuillan from Legal Sports Report here in the house, and I do wonder whether or not we'll get the actual data as to like how much this new app from Apple is downloaded, and if this is a game changer as far as checking scores, odds. And Sam McQuillan is with us. Like everybody, Sam, has their favorite app that they check their scores on, right? Like for me, I have one of the apps on my phone, and I have the SportsGrid app, so I check on that. I have the Score, which you may be familiar with also. I also check on that. And I wonder, Sam, if Apple, with their launch yesterday of this new app, is going to surpass some of these, if people are going to use this in their daily life. Because really, isn't that the key to them having success, is they want this to be a part of the mainstream, checking odds, etc.?
Yeah, first of all, love the plug for the SportsGrid app. Go download it if you don't have it already. It's a great app. Check the scores and everything. But yeah, kind of to your point, I agree. I have my apps. I like to use Bleacher Report. The Score obviously is a big one as well. And it's really interesting to see Apple finally getting in the sports space. They've been kind of on the sidelines for a while, doing a couple of TV deals through Apple TV. Obviously, you have Friday Night Baseball, so some games on there. And then they have a contract with the MLS as well, which obviously soccer isn't as big, but it's significant to have a whole league. So it's interesting that they have this new app, Apple Sports. I'm really fascinated to see personally how much they integrate it with the rest of the iPhone. I think that's been one thing that we've seen really help people adopt things quicker. You know, is this going to be something where there's a button and you can throw something in your iMessages real quick, and there's a score you send your buddy? Or if you're typing out something, is it going to say, hey, like, do you want to check the score or send the score? Something like that. That would kind of get you away from these other apps that aren't owned by Apple, but people like to use just because they're kind of familiar with them. That sort of thing, you know, whether or not, you know, a game will pop up on your, like, do you want to add it to your calendar? That kind of thing. I think that's going to be really cool to watch how far they go. Obviously, Apple is really good with tech. So the fact that they're building an app like this kind of gives me hope that maybe some of like the buggy apps we've seen that can be delayed, even sportsbooks sometimes, there's kind of a solution to that to kind of simplify everything and make everything easier from a user experience. Now those apps, you know, the Score, Bleacher Report, they all have exclusive odds partners. We've seen, right, you know, as sports gets bigger and bigger, all of a sudden the odds are in the apps. And probably the most notable thing for me covering this was the fact that DraftKings odds are in the Apple Sports app. You know, it's no kind of mistake that they're the same exact odds on the DraftKings Sportsbook. DraftKings came out yesterday and said, yep, those are our odds. You know, we're excited, but didn't really go more into what the partnership would involve. Obviously, you know, the Score, owned by Penn, uses ESPN bet odds, and we've seen ESPN add odds as well for ESPN bet. So it's just kind of in line with a lot of deals that, you know, companies like BetMGM have done recently as well, partnering with Twitter, or X as it's now called, to integrate their odds in and kind of get their name out there and, you know, their odds in front of more people. We haven't really seen many companies like do things with it yet besides just having the odds. So it kind of remains to be seen how far, you know, whether you're going to be able to click a button and all of a sudden you have a bet slip in DraftKings, or if you can bet through the Apple Sports app, that kind of thing. But we've seen like companies like Apple, Google, Amazon, kind of the holy grail, to borrow a phrase from my editor, Adam Candy, for these sports books, in terms of these are the first places that people go on the internet to check a lot of things. And if you can get your name, your brand right there, it can be big from that standpoint. So it's a pretty interesting deal. We don't know kind of the financial terms yet, what's to come. We've seen DraftKings kind of move to these more efficient customer acquisition deals as opposed to newer sports books like Bet365, Fanatics, and ESPN Bet, which are just spending a lot on promos. DraftKings has really kind of been vocal about, we want to, you know, spend money on these deals that are going to get us to different audiences, not necessarily just pump out promo money and stuff. But the fact that Apple has a sports app now where you can see live odds, it's pretty crazy. You know, 6 years into sports betting, we're at this point already, and it seems like, you know, there's going to be more to come eventually on this. So exciting to follow this for sure.
All right. So to just put a bow on the story, Sam, so you do think eventually we'll find out what the partnership entailed monetarily and all that? I know some we do and some we don't. Is this just too big of one that we will find out eventually? Because that's the next part of the story, right?
Yeah, it's a good question. If I had to bet on it, I'd say you probably don't find out. Companies just like to reveal this kind of stuff, especially if they don't have to. We didn't hear how much the Twitter and BetMGM one was, and I don't imagine we will. There's no incentive for them to come out. So yeah, I don't think we will.
Okay. No, we did get this word on Jack Pocket. DraftKings acquired them for $750 million. iGaming, of course, is the focus here. A lot of states want to legalize iGaming, and it kind of feels like, when DraftKings and FanDuel started, it was interesting, Sam, with the DFS. We felt like, oh, well, eventually there's going to be sports betting, and then they're going to have a sports book. Now it's like iGaming is the next thing that's not legal in some places, but we all sort of feel like it will be. And therefore, the acquisitions are happening from all of the companies realizing soon you're going to be able to bet on this. So let's go ahead and get our footprint in on it.
Yeah, 100%. This is sort of an example of there's no more states legalizing iGaming this year, probably. Say there's a very small percent chance. Even next year, it'll be tough to have more in, I think there's about 6 states that have iGaming. So what companies like DraftKings are doing in the meantime is preparing for when they do, making these acquisitions, these investments. DraftKings didn't have the best end to the year financially. They missed on earnings just a little bit, thanks to some football games in November that didn't really go their way, which is pretty unusual. And a lot of other sports books felt that as well. But sort of what they've done here is kind of like, okay, we see that didn't go that well. We're going to come out and have this other news that overshadows it, which is the acquisition of Jack Pocket. It's they're paying $750 million for this company, which obviously no small fee. Half of that will be in DraftKings stock. But this is like the biggest online lottery retail app that exists in America. The lottery market is about $100 billion, give or take, including scratch offs and everything. And they account for about 30% of that, according to most Wall Street estimates, which is no small number, obviously. So the fact that DraftKings is then gaining, not only this entry into iGaming in newer states that haven't legalized it yet, they're also gaining, this whole customer base where they're going to have the DraftKings brand in front of them, and then obviously make a ton of money off of lottery tickets, because you make a lot more money. I hope I'm not shocking anyone with breaking news, but you make a lot more money off of being a lottery ticket seller than you do as a sports book, where you can have unfavorable outcomes, things like that. And it's been interesting to hear DraftKings talk about sort of the potential different ways they can use it. To your point, they compared it to daily fantasy sports. Before sports betting was legal, DraftKings was the daily fantasy sports brand, and that's what people knew it as. But this app is available in a lot of states like Texas, Minnesota, where there is no sports betting yet. So they're able to use Jack Pocket in these states, be in the DraftKings database, and then eventually, whenever Minnesota, Texas legalize sports betting, DraftKings will already have their information and know a lot about the customers' habits as well. The data is so important. So, it's a pretty big deal from that standpoint, not just on iGaming, but on kind of the future of sports betting and everything as well. So, it'd be cool to see what more collaboration they do tech-wise with what's going on in the app. CEO Jason Robbins has kind of mentioned that a little bit. Maybe that's on the table in the future. We'll have to see. But as of right now, they're probably just going to be focused on, flipping these customers into DraftKings and making money off of a very lucrative app.
Yep, agreed. Okay, let's close it out, Sam. I believe we have about a minute and a half to go here. Not surprising here on the show, we have another state that is fighting the daily fantasy pick'em games. This time we go to Massachusetts, another state that's trying to eliminate them. Sam, this is never going to stop. I mean, honestly, if I was getting into the DFS pick'em business, I may want to just get out right now, because I think one by one, these are going to get eliminated unless they change the legislation or the plan or pay taxes. I mean, one of those things is going to have to happen.
Yeah, Craig, I feel like I'm like a broken answering machine at this point, or a broken record. It's Massachusetts this week, Florida, Arkansas last week as well. That's 4 more states on top of the already dozen that have either sent cease and desist letters or said they would send cease and desist letters to these pick'em fantasy sports companies that a lot of regulators have basically said, hey, these are player prop bets that are just in the form of parlays. It's not fantasy. It's player versus house. Please leave our state. And it's been interesting. All of this is kind of this new wave we've been talking about recently. It's kind of come right after the Super Bowl, after football season is over. Obviously, the most biggest revenue time of year for these companies, which have sort of kind of changed their tune a little bit. They agreed to pull out of some states. Interesting in Massachusetts, the regulator said, it's not my intent to put them in jail, but I might send them cease and desist letters to kind of warn them, you need to change your offering. So I imagine we'll see more cases of, them collaborating with regulators. But it's been a lot to cover and a lot for these companies to handle, obviously. Some big states like Massachusetts, Florida off the board, that's pretty detrimental to their business, especially at a time of year when you're just talking about college sports mainly coming up, which, you can't do in every state that they do. So it's going to continue to develop, and I'm sure we'll hear more about it in the coming weeks, more states and more action taken.
All right, Sam will be back on the show next week. We'll, roll the roulette, pick a state. They're going to be saying you can't play DFS and pick them games, I think. Anyway,
I hope not.
Have a great rest of your week, Sam. Enjoy some college hoops this weekend. I know you'll be watching some NBA and Knicks action, of course, and we'll talk next week. Thanks for coming on.
Yep, thanks a lot, Craig. Have a good one.
All right, Sam McQuillan with us here on NewsWire. Coming up next, Ben Stevens speaking of the Knicks as a preview of tonight's Knicks 76ers game. And, of course, Gilbert McGregor is going to join us, talk about some of the other games on the slate and the ratings for the All-Star game. We'll be right back.
Johnny's a 19-point lead late in the opening half, only to squander that lead. Hall ball under Shaheen Holloway coming all the way back.
All these guards start jacking up shots, and then Fiorio doesn't get the ball. Hey, Rick, how about stop throwing your kids under the bus and get your big man the ball, your best player, play inside out like you were doing earlier in the game, and you probably would have won.
The Early Line. Only on SportsGrid.
This is going to fall 6, 7, or 8, right? This is going to fall 6, 7, or 8. 6 you lose, 7 you push, 8 you win. So it's going to come down to the end.
And he missed the 3, and they are not going to foul. They're not going to foul. He just drove and scored, though. Oh, they gave up a dunk with 14.1 to go.
In-game live, prime time, only on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
It felt during the year that there was a little bit of disconnect with Wilkes and Kyle Shanahan. The total points allowed by Steve Wilkes' defense the last 3 years before this, head coach for the Cardinals, they gave up the 26th most points. Defensive coordinator for the Browns, 20th most points. And then Carolina, they gave up the 19th most points.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. The NBA is back. All-Star break is over, thank goodness. This thing goes way too long these days. But anyway, we got good games tonight, although LeBron's going to be out tonight. We'll preview that game coming up with Gilbert McGregor. Let's get to a marquee matchup tonight between the New York Knicks and the Philadelphia 76ers. We'll also preview the Suns and Mavericks. Ben Stevens has got his full detailed look at the odds on these games, and here is a preview of both.
Craig, after a long All-Star break, the NBA is back in action on this Thursday. A pretty full slate all around the association. And often, Craig, the casual fan, might think of an All-Star break as the midway point, that halfway mark of an NBA season. Not the case around the association. Every team has played at least 53 of their 82 regular season games, all 30 NBA organizations. So that means less than 30 regular season games remaining for every club around the NBA. We start with a matchup in the Eastern Conference tonight. The Philadelphia 76ers hosting the New York Knicks. In the month of January, Craig, New York was the hottest team in the NBA, winners of 14 of 16, and something to note as it pertains to tonight's total, 226.5. In 14 of 16 for New York in the month of January, they stayed under the pregame total. But in February, just a 2-5 mark. They lost 4 straight entering the All-Star break, over in 3 of 5 losses to enter that All-Star break in Indianapolis. Philadelphia, meanwhile, also not playing its best basketball, but that due to injury. Joel Embiid still on the sideline, expected to be on the sidelines for a little bit more time as Philadelphia gets ready to approach the postseason. The Sixers still 10 games, though, above 500. They have lost 9 of their last 12, entering the All-Star break, 10 of those 12 games without Joel Embiid. Now out to the Western Conference, the hottest team out west, entering the All-Star break, these Dallas Mavericks, a 2.5-point home favorite tonight, hosting the Phoenix Suns. The Mavs won 6 straight games, Craig, entering that All-Star break, covering in 5 of 6, including 1 game outright as an underdog. Here, the Mavs are as the favorite, laying 2.5 at home tonight. Phoenix, a slight underdog, something the Suns have not been all that often this year. Phoenix 33-22, booked as the favored side 42 of their 55 games before the All-Star break. Getting 2.5 points tonight, though, as we enter the home stretch of this NBA campaign. Dallas with that 6-game win streak, just a little bit behind Phoenix in terms of those Western Conference standings. Right now, the Suns in the 5 spot officially. Same record, though, as the New Orleans Pelicans. Dallas only a game behind the Mavs in the 7 spot. Craig, that postseason positioning, something to pay attention to down this home stretch. Of course, you're trying to get out of 7 through 10 in that seeding range to be one of the top 6 in your conference standings to avoid having to play in the play-in tournament. That's where we stand, Craig, entering this home stretch of the association season all around the NBA.
All right, thanks very much, Ben. And let's get more NBA news notes information and potentially some picks against the spread. Gilbert McGregor joins us courtesy of Sporting News as we get into what happened in the past and we'll get to the future. Gilbert, once again, thanks for coming on the show. As we speculated last week, we thought there'd be a chance when the ratings come out for the NBA All-Star game that they would be very low. I did not expect this trend to be continuing here, though. Last year was lowest watched. And now this year is the second lowest. So welcome to the show, Gilbert. And I guess we got our answer there. The NBA has to take notice of what's going on now at this point.
Yeah, they have to figure something out, Craig. And I think the product, on Sunday was, I won't go as far as to say it's unacceptable, but it's certainly not what we expect from the 24 best basketball players in the world. It feels like this year's All-Star weekend peaked on Saturday night with the Steph versus Sabrina contest. There was an element of, excitement around that. And there was also an element of kind of what we didn't know what to expect there. I think now our expectations from the All-Star game have gotten lower and lower, and it's reflected in the ratings. So hopefully we can figure something out to get the guys competing a little bit more, playing maybe a little more defense. I don't want to see anybody score 200 points again in a 48-minute game and maybe bounce back. It's going to take some time, though, because you don't just go from where we have been these past 2 years and get right back to where we once were, but taking some steps in the right direction, I think, is what we can do moving forward, what the league should try to do moving forward.
Yeah, agreed. Find a way. Find a way to fix it, as they say. Okay, so we had heard a few months ago that there was a chance that the Wizards and Capitals would make their way to Virginia, getting some financial support there. But now it looks like there's some pushback here coming from the union. Do you think that this eventually happens, Gilbert? It feels like more times out of, like, let's say 8 or 9 times out of 10, when we hear the smoke, there's the fire, and then eventually it gets done. Is that going to be the case here with this one, with this relocation, or do you think that there's just too much battle here and they end up staying?
Since we first heard about the potential move, it seems like there's been setback after setback. But at the same time, when you think about the powers that be and the ownership groups of the Wizards and Capitals, if they really want this move to happen, they'll eventually find a way for it to happen. I just think that it might maybe throw the timeline off a little bit. The interesting thing about this union is that the same union representing the workers is the same union that represents those who work concessions at Capital One Arena. So there's a little conflict of interest there between that. Those people could be out of jobs if they're unable to go to the Northern Virginia site. So I understand there could be some snags in the process. I know it's also been met, with a little pushback from locals in DC, because the current arena is a little bit easier to get to using public transportation. And if they move to Northern Virginia, that might be met with some pushback as well. So if they can figure out these issues or iron them out, then maybe they can straighten it out. But I just guess it might take a little bit longer than we initially expected.
Yep, I would agree. Okay, so let's preview games tonight. We got a really good one to start with, by the way. Maybe 3 good ones here, but I know we got one really good one. That's the Clippers and Thunder. This is a potential Western Conference Finals preview. Again, I'm not trying to insult Denver or anybody else. OKC's had a great year. They're 2-point favorites tonight over the Clippers, total of 236.5. The other thing with a game like this, Gilbert, is you'll have to catch me up here on the injury report with these two teams, because that's always the story with the Clippers.
That's very true. And I think, we talked about how long All-Star break is. They're a team that definitely should have been able to benefit from having a week without playing any games. So that'll be good. The last time these two teams met, the Clippers did a really good job of limiting Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. So I'm sure that'll be fresh on his mind, and he'll look to bounce back against his former team that traded him away in that Paul George deal. So I do think it's going to be a close game, as the spread would indicate. But I do kind of lean towards the Clippers in this one. They'll benefit from having that All-Star break. And it seems like they kind of have the Thunder's number, at least the last matchup they had. And I think that you'll see that veteran savvy that they have go in their advantage as they take on a younger Thunder team who seemed like they didn't know what to do the last time these two teams met.
Well, when people look at tonight's game in Golden State in the Bay Area taking on the Los Angeles Lakers, they may say, wait a second, why are the Warriors 5.5-point favorites? Reason why: LeBron already ruled out for this game tonight at Golden State. Total of 243.5. So should be a fun, high-scoring game. But can the Lakers keep this close, Gilbert, without LeBron tonight?
I think they can keep it close. I think they can keep it close because of Anthony Davis. These are two teams who are trending in similar directions. I think the Lakers have won 7 of 10, and the Warriors have won 8 of 10. Klay Thompson moved to the bench in their last game before All-Star break and seemed like he's figured something out, had 35 points off the bench for them. So the Warriors are rounding into shape. Draymond Green is back in the lineup, and he's now having the Draymond Green impact that they look towards him having. Chris Paul is almost back, even though he won't play tonight. But the Lakers are dealing with injuries. We know LeBron James not playing, but they've also dealt with injuries to Christian Wood and Jared Vanderbilt, who are 2 key players in their rotation. So can Rui Hachimura keep up his big play? He's been playing really well since he got reinserted into their starting lineup. Can Anthony Davis have a dominant performance? Because the Warriors don't really have anybody that can lock down a focused Anthony Davis. So if he can have one of those 25 and 15 type games, 30 and 18 type games, which he's done before, and he did last year against the Warriors when LeBron James was inactive, I think they can keep the game close. But ultimately, I think the Warriors have a lot of momentum, and the fact that they're playing this one at home, I think it was a strategic game for LeBron James to miss because they felt like it was an uphill battle to begin with.
Yeah, it could be 5.5-point spread tonight on FanDuel. Speaking of big spreads tonight, Boston on the road, 8.5-point favorites at the Chicago Bulls. That's the kind of year it's been for them. All right, Gilbert, total 226. All right, look, I know before I even ask you, you're going to tell me that Boston's going to blow them out. But I'm going to ask you to paint the other side. Let's play the other side here, and let's ask ourselves how the Bulls keep the game close tonight against the Celtics, because I think we would agree these two teams may be in the East, but they're on different planets right now.
Absolutely. I think the thing the Bulls do, and something you can never really count out with this Chicago team, is they have that strange ability to make games ugly. Can they slow the pace down? Get the Celtics out of the game that they want to play, because we know these Celtics like to get up and down the floor, like to shoot a lot of threes, and like to run the score up. So if the Bulls can slow it down a little bit, can they lean on Kobe White to do things for them? Can they lean on their front court of Nikola Vucevic? Can Andre Drummond have an impact against that Celtics front court? That will be the way to keep things close, and they'll need some good scoring from Kobe White and DeMar DeRozan as well, because they're without Zach LaVine for the rest of the season. So you're going against the Celtics team that has a lot of firepower. You got to find your firepower somewhere, and Kobe White and DeMar DeRozan are those two guys for Chicago.
Yeah, I'm going to go off the grid here for a minute and talk about something else I saw the other day. I want your opinion on something. I saw a listing, I believe it was Forbes, and I don't want to credit the wrong people here, but they listed the most valuable franchises in professional sports. I don't know if you saw this, Gilbert, but I'll enlighten you, and then you can just tell me what you think. I saw the Dallas Cowboys were number one, and that made a lot of sense to me. What I'm wondering is why are the Golden State Warriors, I believe they were number 2 or number 3, and that's overall in all of professional sports. I couldn't grasp why that is. Well, am I missing something there? I mean, I understand they have a brand new stadium and everything else, and their move, but why are they the second or third most valuable franchise in sports?
It's been an astronomical leap for the Warriors over the past decade. I want to say it's pretty recent that they did overtake the Knicks and the Lakers as being the most valuable franchises. And on top of what you were saying with the new arena at the Chase Center moving to San Francisco and the money that came with that, because it's not a cheap ticket to get to a game out in San Francisco. But also they've won 4 championships in the past decade. So thinking about the brand and Steph Curry being the face of that brand and his global popularity and the Warriors' global popularity. I know they're a huge team overseas, whether it's in Asia, Europe. There are a lot of fans of this Warriors franchise. And I think that, the Steph Curry effect on top of everything else that they've been able to do has made that global brand stronger than it's ever been. And I'm sure that things may balance back out if we see, the Knicks continue to play the level they've been playing and make the most of what they're doing this year, or the Lakers come back and get back on the mountaintop again. But as long as Steph Curry is out there and the Warriors have that brand recognition, I think they'll stay up there for a while.
Yeah, it's really fascinating to see. It was the one surprise. Like most, I think NFL franchises, I get it. The New York Yankees, I get it. And then all of a sudden, it's like Golden State Warriors at the top. Okay, great explanation. The global part of it, didn't consider that. Thank you again, Gilbert, for coming here on NewsWire. Really appreciate it. And we'll talk again next week.
Absolutely, Craig. Have a great weekend.
All right, Gilbert McGregor from Sporting News. Coming up next, you thought Tiger Woods' popularity was waning? Well, there may be another reason why he's popular again, and it has nothing to do with him. It has to do with his son. Folks, we could be getting another Woods on the PGA Tour. Is this possible? We'll explore that coming up next year on NewsWire. Don't go away.
Johnny's a 19-point lead late in the opening half, only to squander that lead. Hall ball under Shaheen Holloway coming all the way back.
All these guards start jacking up shots, and then Chiorio doesn't get the ball. Hey, Rick, how about stop throwing your kids under the bus and get your big man the ball, your best player, play inside out like you were doing earlier in the game, and you probably would have won.
The Early Line. Only on SportsGrid.
This is going to fall 6, 7, or 8, right? This is going to fall 6, 7, or 8. 6 you lose, 7 you push, 8 you win. So it's going to come down to the end.
And he missed the 3, and they are not going to foul. They're not going to foul. He just drove and scored, though. Oh, they gave up a dunk with 14.1 to go.
In-game live, prime time, only on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
It felt during the year that there was a little bit of disconnect with Wilks and Kyle Shanahan. The total points allowed by Steve Wilks' defense the last 3 years before this, head coach for the Cardinals, they gave up the 26th most points, defensive coordinator for the Browns, 20th most points, and then Carolina, they gave up the 19th most points.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Well, maybe time to get ready for another Woods on the PGA Tour. We may not be that far from it. Tiger Woods' son, Charlie, has entered a pre-qualifier for the PGA Tour. I believe it's underway right now in West Palm Beach. Now, again, you got to temper your expectations. Charlie's very young. I believe he's 15, so there's still a lot of time for him to be able to get to the PGA Tour. But needless to say, this is sort of the first step here. And if indeed this ends up happening, get ready, folks, because we're going to have somebody that is must watch, just like his dad. And Tiger Woods, no word yet on the skill set. Again, it's so hard to get excited about a young kid who is like essentially just making his way into this, and you really don't get the your full body or anything until like 18 years old, 19 years old. We saw that with Tiger Woods. So we don't want to put the cart ahead of the horse, so to speak, here, but to have this level of excitement is something that we haven't seen on the PGA Tour in a long time. And if he ends up playing and qualifying, oh my gosh, forget about it. This is what we're going to be watching without question as the PGA Tour rolls on this season and in future seasons, potentially with Charlie Woods. How about joining his dad, Tiger, in an event too? How about that? Well, could see that happen too. Okay, well, folks, that will do it for this action-packed edition of the show today. Thanks to Gilbert McGregor for sporting news and also Ben for his preview video of the NBA games tonight. In addition, we want to thank Scott Farrell for that little clip on LeBron James, in addition to Jeff Levering. And Jeff did a great job, I thought, talking about the Brewers. You may want to check him out, of course, on Bally Sports, on TV, and on radio as well. In addition, thanks to Sam McQuillan from Legal Sports Report, our associate producer, Michael Cohen, and our producer, Sam Yarnell. I am going to go have some lunch, and then I'll be back with you tomorrow at 11 a.m. Eastern for our next edition of NewsWire. It's our Friday edition of the show. And, folks, more than anything else, hey, it is baseball season. You got spring training action set to get underway in the Cactus League this afternoon between the Dodgers and Padres, and then this weekend for everybody else in Florida and Arizona. So happy baseball season to all. I know we still got a lot of college basketball and NBA and NHL to cover. We'll do that with Pharrell at 3 o'clock Eastern. I'll see you tomorrow. Have a great rest of your day.